This is your second book on Black Sabbath. The first, Doom Let Loose, we thought you had it all covered in there, but no, you now have Black Sabbath FAQ. But this says this is all that's left to know on the first name in metal. And actually, there's 90% new information in here. How did you do that?
Well, the idea with this series is that you can write standalone chapters on all sorts of different things. So there's like 40 chapters on stuff. The first book, you probably couldn't go down all those different tributaries and look into things that might be considered side subjects. Well, this is the perfect place to do that sort of thing. It allowed me to look at things like arcane stuff, like the Blue Oyster Cult Black and Blue tour with Sabbath, Black Sabbath playing with Van Halen. These things that probably an editor would cut out of a normal book or say, just give us a paragraph or something on that. And I also did a lot of stuff like listing favorite Sabbath albums in terms of the album covers or the production on them. I wrote reviews of everything. This also allowed me, an interesting thing was some of the last chapters in it used a lot of the last interviews I ever had with Ronnie James Dio and all the other Sabbath guys, because that whole heaven and hell part of the situation came after the last book, which was, I think, around 2005. So it allowed me to finish the story. So I've got a lot of really good interview stuff in there. But also, just the idea when they brought it up to me, I first thought there's no way I could do another book on them. But then it's all that geeky information that we all love that I was allowed to put into this thing.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about the research process for this.
Well, I did get a lot of interviews with people that you wouldn't normally, guys that I actually, some of I didn't find or couldn't get with for the first book, like guys like Jim Simpson and Norman Hood. There's stuff on side bands that are sort of satanic bands like Black Widow and Coven. So I talked to Jinx Dawson, which was really cool. She's great. The research, I suppose, one of the things I wanted to do is stay away from all the other Black Sabbath books, including my own. Yes, I did not use any of my interview archive that I had with Sabbath before, because I didn't want a single quote in this thing to come from the other books, because I expect, a lot of people who have the first Sabbath book will be the people getting this one. So yeah, the research was a bit funny. It was basically stay away from everything that is sort of the tried and true, and the tried and true with respect to my own tried and true with my own book.
I can see this being turned into a drinking game. Do you see that?
Absolutely. There's a lot of list stuff because as kids, as teenagers, we used to have those drinking games where on a Friday night you throw on a bunch of records and you'd sit down and you'd just pour through 50 different lists on things. Okay, who's the greatest lead singer now? Let's write those all down and compare them. So there's a lot of cool listy type stuff. And there's definitely a lot of discussion it'll probably generate, hopefully.
The lists you include in the book are the Black Sabbath album covers, and I'm wondering what your favorite album cover is.
Favorite and best is, there's an entire chapter on Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, because that's such a crazy, crazy album cover. It's so evil and satanic and heavy, and there's nudity and stuff. Like for 1973, I've always been amazed how that didn't cause more consternation at the time. But so it's somewhat a favorite because it's just so out there. But I also really like Technical Ecstasy, and I really like Never Say Die, which are two of those, kind of moody, cool, lonely hypnosis type covers. I think both of them are brilliant, and it's nice that they kind of make Sabbath look even more artistic than they are, because they are so kind of standoffish and just really erudite, I suppose.
Is there one urban legend or story that has been told wrong for so many years now that you finally put to rest in this book?
I'll have to think about that for a second, but I'll tell you one thing that's such a major thing that a lot of people need to keep being reminded of is the fact that Geezer Butler wrote all the lyrics, not Ozzy. So it's a bit of an odd situation where it's not the lead singer, it's the bass player writing all this stuff. And what a great writer he is. Those lyrics are so underrated. But actually, one whole chapter in this that we touched upon before, this whole thing with Van Halen and Black Sabbath, that's starting to be this massive urban legend that Van Halen blew Black Sabbath off the stage. This is 1978. Their first album is just coming out. Black Sabbath is really tired. They're touring an album that's got really bad reviews and bad sales. It's the last one with Ozzy. Everybody's drinking and doing too much drugs, and Van Halen's got so much to prove. So, there's a lot of stuff in that chapter about how do you really blow someone off the stage? Does that mean all four of them were doing better than you every single night than all four of you? Does that mean, these people all bought tickets to come see Black Sabbath, so you've got a leg up already. They're there to see you. They don't even know this backup band. So how much really did all that happen? And as I delved into it a little bit, I mean, you talk to people and they say, nah, Black Sabbath was great on that tour. We loved them and stuff. But there's also a lot of funny stuff in there about how Van Halen stole various little parts of the Sabbath show along the way as well. So yeah, that sort of stuff. The Black and Blue thing again is interesting about how much those bands were fighting, and were they fighting, and was it the crews that were fighting? And they had a funny situation there where the manager of both bands was Sandy Pearlman, this really cool legend guy, and there's a lot of good interview stuff in there. So yeah, that's a little bit.
As long as we're here and you're talking about managers and Ozzy, Sharon Osbourne, does she have a positive or negative effect on the legacy?
Well, let's see. That's a really interesting question. Starting out in the beginning, you might say that she had a positive effect because she had such a positive effect on Ozzy's career. So did that have a positive effect on Sabbath? It kind of did, because maybe it kicked their butts and made them excel and try to do better. And they did get a real lease on life with Ronnie James Dio. Heaven and Hell did great. Mob Rules did great. The live album, the band was kind of starting to break up a little bit by then. But so I would suppose right off the bat, I would say yes. And then later on, through Sharon's, unflagging devotion to Ozzy and his career, she had a positive effect again by bringing together and holding together the Black Sabbath reunion with them. And then lastly, a very kind of interesting thing, I remember asking, I would ask all of them. I believe I asked all of them a little bit about this. They don't tell you very much, but when Heaven and Hell got together, and this is Ronnie James Dio is back again, I asked the guys, what does Sharon think of all this? And Tony would say, oh, I just had dinner with Sharon the other day. We have her complete blessing. She realizes everybody's got to eat, everybody's got to work. So it sounds like later in life, even though there was this thing that, with Sharon's reputation, everybody thinks she'd be on the warpath over. It went great. So I suppose if you look at it all the way along, Sharon being there and being the great manager she is helped both Ozzy and Sabbath.
If there was a local trivia contest on Black Sabbath and you couldn't answer the questions, what Black Sabbath band member would you take with you? Who knows the most history?
I would say the spokesman for the band has turned out to be Bill Ward more than anything. He's a great interview. He's a super nice guy. He's thoughtful. He's introspective, and he does seem to have a lot of the history. One of the unfortunate things, and he'll be glad to tell you this because he's so honest and warm and forthright, is that he's had major drinking periods, blackout periods, where he says he doesn't remember much. But in the same breath, he'll tell you, I don't remember much about that. And then he'll go on and tell you a great story about it, which proves he kind of does remember it. So I would say Bill, and I've heard Geezer is a little bit of a keeper of the Sabbath flame too. Like he's a bit of a collector guy. Like he told me when, my old book, Doom Let Loose, he says, oh yeah, that book cost me a lot of money because I had to go through it and buy everything I didn't have, because there's a lot of pictures of memorabilia and bootlegs and stuff in it. So I thought that was kind of cool that he was, out there trying to collect everything Sabbath related.
You are so well known as the Sabbath expert as well. What's the one question fans ask you the most when they get a hold of you?
I think a lot of them do like to hear about that murky management stuff, because there is a lot of stories untold about the whole Jim Simpson over to the Patrick Meehan Sr., Patrick Meehan Jr. Don Arden is involved later. Then there's Sandy Pearlman, and then there's this crazy Don Arden, Sharon Arden time that Sharon essentially wrenches Ozzy away from Don Arden. And then, Sabbath management stuff kind of settles down after that. But yeah, I think a lot of people really want to know about the management and the money, because Sabbath also has this unfortunate history where it sounds like they didn't make a lot of money along the way at the right times. It sounds like more or less a lot of that has been rectified. I'm sure a lot of it was the band's fault as well. But just that murky money side of it.
Something as you were answering that question, it made me think, if you don't know the answer to a Sabbath question, who do you call to figure out that answer?
There's a lot of experts in the world. I mean, there's Hugh Gilmore and Steve Hammonds over in the UK. I mean, a great buddy of mine, Joe Sigler, who runs black-sabbath.com, which is not the official site, but it is the official site. It's the best, greatest source of Sabbath information. He's a very detailed guy. He'll investigate stuff. He'll put up all the news much quicker than anybody else will put up the news. So Joe is a good Sabbath expert. Yeah, so there are massive fans out there. I'm wearing a Candlemass shirt. Leif Edling from Candlemass, Swedish doom band. He is a massive Sabbath collector and big fan. So there are guys that definitely know more than me on anything. But the reason I like writing these books is I like to assimilate all that stuff, put it down in one place so I could like download it out of my head and I don't have to keep remembering all this trivia. It's nice. Sometimes I write these books just so I have a reference book that I can go back to and find stuff and go, I didn't know I knew that. And well, it's true. I only knew that for the 10 minutes it took me to put it in the right place. And then it's like out of the head again.
So true. That is one of the most fun things about the book, is you can just kind of pick and choose and float around and learn what you want to learn that day, whatever it is that you were thinking about. In fact, there was one thing in the book, songs that sound like other Black Sabbath songs, which always makes me think of ACDC too, so many of their songs.
Yes.
But as fans, do we care? No, we don't care. We love them all.
Yeah. Well, that's the kind of thing that's quite a challenge. I mean, we talked about Sabbath experts. People kind of know one Sabbath song that sounds like another song, or they know two or three, but no one, even these Sabbath experts, never sit down and actually really start comparing a whole bunch of it and put down all their thoughts before they forget about it. I mean, it'll happen in passing. They'll have this deep thought, but they're not in a situation to record it for all posteriority or whatever, right? So yeah, that was a cool chapter for sure.
Another cool project that you're working on is, or you finished actually, but it hasn't been seen yet, is Metal Evolution for VH1 Classic. Tell us about that.
Yes, what it is, it's 11 one-hour episodes on all the different heavy metal genres. We've got, let's see if I can get them all here. We've got pre-metal, early metal UK, early metal US, shock rock, glam, new wave of British heavy metal, thrash, grunge, new metal. That might be all of them. Power metal, progressive metal. So it's all 1 hour. It's actually 42 minutes plus commercials. It's with Sam Dunn and Scott McFadden, who did the Iron Maiden movie, Metal: A Headbanger's Journey, Global Metal, and the Rush movie. So that was a full-time job for me for a year and a half. And now I'm not there anymore because, the thing moves through the Python. It's through to finishing up the last interview. Sam does all the interviews. He went on the road and interviewed like 300 people, like repeated trips all over the world to get this done. It's a massive project. But now it's basically in the editing stages, and there's photo gathering and rare video gathering. Like, we found some amazing things, and Sam had great interviews. He's a great interviewer, and it's like, usually he sits down with these guys and he doesn't let them go for at least an hour. I mean, he gets a lot out of them. So it airs 11/11/11, so November 11th, and yeah, it's going to be big. VH1 considers it a big deal. They're going to have like a heavy metal day that day and air some of the other stuff. I'm sure maybe Metal Headbanger's Journey will be there, but there'll be an episode of that metal show as well, and that'll be the first episode. And I think it starts chronologically, so the first one will be pre-metal, which starts at like 1250 BC and blowing down the walls of Jericho with horns, and moves through Vikings and Scottish bagpipes and using music in war and the blues and jazz and opera and all that stuff. So all that gets piled into the first episode as we move up into basically the 50s and the early 60s.
Before we go, and speaking of books, what are you working on? What's coming up?
Well, let's see. We've got a heavy metal hard rock album cover book that's going to be like a big swanky coffee table book. At the printers right now, there's a Deep Purple Royal Family timeline with images book, which is a part one, goes up to 1980. Finished and in layout right now is the Deep Purple Royal Family Chain of Events 80 to 11, which is also big timeline trivia quotes, again, images. Like the first one's got 542 images in it, I think. And then I'm going to do a New Wave of British Heavy Metal book where I review every single and every album. I had a singles book. This is kind of putting that back into print and using a lot of my other reviews. And we'll have a lot of graphics. There'll be a New Wave of British Heavy Metal timeline book. And I've got this series called Ye Old Metal, where I've done 5 books where it's just, I just take some old album and write a chapter on it, interview the guys. So I've got 5 of those so far. So the next one up would be Ye Old Metal 1979. So I just got to find about 18 albums from 1979 that I want to do. And other ones, you know, I don't know. I mean, I could see doing something with either Ted Nugent, Scorpions, Thin Lizzy, Pantera. Those are all ones that are kind of on the radar that I have lots and lots of interviews with. I love all those bands. So yeah, I don't know, but they'll be basically probably 4 books in a pretty big hurry, like before maybe January of next year, like in the next 4, 5, 6 months. So.
Martin, thank you so much for being here. It was really fun, and I hope you'll come back when some of the other books are out there so we can talk
sure,
more.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me. This has been great.